Welcome to Super Showdowns, the ultimate destination for epic battles and legendary showdowns. Join us as we put iconic superheroes, villains, and mythological figures against each other in a thrilling matches of strength, strategy, and skill. Deep in the heart of Eternia, a world filled with sorcery and ancient power, He-Man, the champion of Castle Grayskull, stood atop the castle's battlements, gazing over the horizon. The sword of power, gleaming with an ethereal glow, rested in his grasp. Eternia was experiencing unusual tremors, and whispers from the sorceress suggested an impending threat. A being of immense strength and indomitable will was making his way to their realm. Simultaneously, in another dimension, Cain Marco, also known as the Juggernaut, charged through a battlefield littered with rubble and broken structures. As the living embodiment of unstoppable force, empowered by the crimson Gem of Cyttorak, he had faced countless foes across dimensions. But his recent clash with a rival sorcerer had left a tear in the fabric of reality. This rift acted as a portal, pulling him into the mystical lands of Eternia. As the portal spat Juggernaut into a desolate canyon, his heavy boots crushed the rocky terrain beneath him. He roared, his voice reverberating through the landscape. "Where am I? Who dares summon the Juggernaut without warning?" His fiery temper and innate sense of domination drove him to destroy whatever lay in his path. Word of the intruder reached Castle Grayskull swiftly. The sorceress, her voice calm but edged with urgency, warned He-Man, "This being is not from our world. He possesses power unlike any other and is driven by an uncontrollable rage. He threatens to shatter the balance of Eternia if left unchecked." He-Man clenched his fist around the hilt of his sword. "Then it's my duty to stop him. No force, no matter how strong, can overpower the will of Eternia's protector."
Hey you! Don't just watch. Subscribe, please.
Meanwhile, Juggernaut's rampage brought him closer to the fertile plains of Eternia. His colossal frame plowed through ancient trees and rocky formations, his momentum seemingly unstoppable. Villagers fled in terror, their cries echoing through the fields. He-Man, mounted on his trusty battle cat, raced toward the disturbance. Two titans first crossed paths near the village of Rondar, where Juggernaut was uprooting a massive boulder to hurl at a fleeing caravan. "Enough!" He-Man's voice thundered as he leapt from Battle Cat, landing before the massive figure. The ground shook beneath his boots. "You've caused enough destruction, stranger. Stand down!" Juggernaut turned, his crimson armor catching the sunlight, and sneered. "Stand down. Nobody tells the Juggernaut what to do. You're either brave or foolish, but either way you're about to be flattened." He-Man raised his sword. "By the power of Grayskull, I will protect this land from you." The air crackled with tension as the sword of power radiated a brilliant light. The sight momentarily intrigued Juggernaut, who took a step closer, his towering frame dwarfing He-Man's. "Cute sword, but I don't need tricks or magic to crush you." The first clash wasn't immediate. Both warriors circled each other, their every movement shaking the earth. Villagers from a distance watched in awe, whispering about the impossibility of He-Man facing a foe so immense and seemingly invulnerable. Juggernaut charged first, his signature move, each step building momentum. He-Man braced himself, planting his feet firmly and raising his sword in defense. The collision was cataclysmic, Juggernaut's unstoppable force meeting the immovable resolve of He-Man. A shockwave rippled through the land, toppling nearby trees and sending a dust cloud into the air. To Juggernaut's surprise, He-Man held his ground, his sword glowing brighter as it absorbed and redirected the energy of the impact. The sheer power of their collision left a crater beneath them, and for the first time in a long while, Juggernaut paused, sizing up his opponent. "Impressive," he muttered, "but I've only just started." He-Man wasn't one to boast. but he knew this battle would test him like never before. He looked into Juggernaut's eyes and saw more than rage. He saw the will of a man cursed to be a juggernaut of destruction, driven by a power that consumed all in its path. You may be strong, but strength alone doesn't decide the outcome of a battle, He-Man said, his voice steady. The Juggernaut cracked his knuckles. We'll see about that. As the sun began to set, their battle promised to be more than a simple clash of might. It would be a test of resolve, strategy, and endurance, with the fate of Eternia hanging in the balance. The stage was set for an epic confrontation, and neither warrior showed signs of backing down. The battlefield was silent for a moment after the initial collision, the dust settling to reveal the two titans standing firm. He-Man's glowing sword radiated an aura of protection, while Juggernaut exuded raw, unrelenting power. Around them, the land bore the scars of their clash, craters in the ground, shattered boulders and broken trees. He-Man took a step forward, his voice resolute. You're powerful, stranger, but your strength is reckless. You'll destroy everything if you... Don't stop, Juggernaut smirked, his massive hands curling into fists. That's the idea, pretty boy. I don't stop. I don't lose, and I definitely don't take orders from anyone. Without another word, Juggernaut charged again, his armored frame cutting through the air like a battering ram. He-Man braced himself, once more, planting his feet and raising the sword of power. The collision this time was even more intense, the shockwave rippling outwards and knocking over trees miles away. He-Man slid back, his boots digging trenches into the earth, but he held firm. His sword flared with energy as he deflected Juggernaut's relentless strikes. Each blow felt like a mountain crashing down, and despite his incredible strength, He-Man began to feel the strain. Juggernaut laughed, sensing the fatigue in his opponent. You're tough, I'll give you that, but all the magic in the world. It can't stop me once I get going. He-Man swung his sword, unleashing a wave of energy that struck Juggernaut square in the chest. The blast sent the colossal brute stumbling backward, but only for a moment. Juggernaut dug his heels into the ground and roared, his momentum reigniting as he lunged forward. This time, He-Man attempted to sidestep, using his agility to outmaneuver the unstoppable force. With a powerful leap, he landed behind Juggernaut and delivered a crushing blow with the flat of his blade to the back of the brute's helmet. The impact rang like a thunderclap, and Juggernaut staggered, but only for a heartbeat. Spinning around with surprising speed, Juggernaut swung his massive arm in a wide arc, catching He-Man off guard. The blow struck He-Man in the chest, sending him flying across the battlefield. He crashed into a rocky outcrop, the impact cracking the stone behind him. Struggling to his feet, He-Man winced as pain shot through his body. Battlecat rushed to his side, growling at the towering intruder. He-Man placed a hand on his companion. Stay back, old friend. This is my fight. Juggernaut laughed, his voice booming. You're strong, kid, but you're out of your league. There's no stopping the Juggernaut. He-Man refused to yield. Raising his sword high, he called upon the power of Grayskull. Lightning arced from the heavens, striking his blade and imbuing him with renewed strength. With a mighty leap, He-Man charged at Juggernaut, his sword aimed for a decisive blow. But Juggernaut was ready. As He-Man descended, Juggernaut reached out with both hands, catching the sword of power in mid-swing. The force of the strike was immense, but Juggernaut's unyielding strength held firm. For a moment, the two warriors were locked in a deadly contest of power, their energies clashing and sending shockwaves through the land. Slowly, Juggernaut began to overpower He-Man. With a guttural roar, he yanked the sword from He-Man's grasp and tossed it aside like a twig. Stunned, He-Man barely had time to react as Juggernaut delivered a crushing uppercut that sent him hurtling into the air. He-Man landed hard, the ground cracking beneath him. Dazed and battered, he struggled to rise, but Juggernaut was already upon him. The unstoppable brute planted a massive foot on He-Man's chest, pinning him to the ground. "You fought well, kid," Juggernaut growled, his tone almost respectful. "But nothing stops me. Not magic, not strength, not you." He-Man gritted his teeth, his hands pushing against Juggernaut's foot in a desperate attempt to free himself. But even with all his strength, he couldn't budge the massive figure. The weight was unbearable, and the realization of defeat began to sink in. Juggernaut leaned down, his expression grim. "You've got heart, and I respect that. But you're not going to stand in my way. This world is mine now." With a final, crushing stomp, Juggernaut sent He-Man into unconsciousness. The Champion of Eternia lay defeated, his mighty sword lying yards away, its glow dimmed. Juggernaut stood triumphant, surveying the ruined battlefield. As he turned to leave, he glanced back at the fallen hero. For a brief moment, a flicker of something resembling respect crossed his face. "Maybe next time, kid." But today, the Juggernaut wins. With heavy steps, Juggernaut marched onward, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Eternia had faced many threats before, but none quite like this. And though He-Man had fallen, the spirit of Eternia's protector would not be extinguished for long.